Hi, everybody. It's Emi Kirschner, and today I'm doing something kind of fun and special as we're wrapping up the year. It's the beginning of December, so for the next couple of weeks, I have some really special guests, and we're going to do video interviews just so that you get to hear from them what their expertise is. And today, I want to start with my really good friend, Heather Turner. Heather.
Hi.
Hi, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Heather founded her firm, the law office of Heather Turner, and she serves the needs of families who are looking for peace of mind with estate planning. And through her work as a lawyer and a former teacher, Heather brings a knowledgeable and gentle approach to the often overwhelming process of estate planning. And what I love about what you do, Heather, is that it really is overwhelming. I think it's scary for a lot of people, and you make it not only simple, but like as fun as possible.
Yes, I try. I mean, a lot of people don't use the word fun associated with estate planning, but I do try to make it friendly, stress-free, more of a, conversation, a teaching experience rather than, doom and gloom, if you will.
Right, right. Because I think it's a lot of people are uncomfortable thinking about their death. And
Rightfully so.
I don't know. I'm not that I'm looking forward to it, but I have a party planned.
Right.
So I feel like I can control when it's going to happen because I'm going to have this party when I turn 100. So
Right. All right. All right. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
maybe
maybe we'll
that's like the
see.
way to go. If you have a plan, then
It'll be the ultimate in manifesting something.
that's right. Maybe that'll right. If I plan it, if I have something planned for that age, then I'm definitely going to get there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it because, you offer so much. And before we get started with kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of, why we should do estate planning now and what you need and everything else, share with us how you got into, practicing estate law.
So, I had practiced law prior to having my children, and I did a lot of estate, but I did also a lot of litigation. And after I had my children, and I would take them to play dates or school or preschool or things like that, I would constantly have these conversations with other parents.
Mhm.
And if there was a room of parents, with 10 parents, 20 parents, whatever it was, at least half of them would say, I don't have a will. I don't have a power of attorney. I have young kids, I have a home, and I don't have these things. And so this conversation kept coming up.
Right.
And eventually I was like, why? Just out of curiosity, like, why is it that you don't have these things? And people would have, sort of various reasons, but they kind of were the same, be it, it's a stressful situation. I don't want to talk about it. I don't like attorneys. The topic is not great. I don't know how much it's going to be. All kinds of things like that were really not reasons in a sense that were good reasons in a way. And I thought to myself, oh, well, I can resolve all of that. I can make it, a good experience, reasonable price,
Right.
stress-free, not sort of this scary kind of lawyer situation. And so that's kind of what prompted me to really focus my practice on estate planning, was really all of these parents who were a little bit freaking out that they didn't have wills and really were very intimidated about doing it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and it is a little intimidating if you haven't thought about it.
Yes, true.
And there are lots of I think pieces to think about and to think through, kind of in a long-term range.
Right.
Share with us too, because you were a former teacher. Like, how does that play into how you practice?
So, I was a lawyer and then gotten a master's in education.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason that I got a master's in education was that sort of the law and teaching kind of go hand in hand, in a sense that I believe that when you are with your clients, or if you're a litigator or you're with the jury, it's really about being a good teacher, really explaining to your clients, everything they need to know, not necessarily in legalese, which nobody understands anyway, even lawyers, but really, but explaining it, in plain language so that, they're knowledgeable and feel when they leave that they really understand what you've spoken about and they really feel comfortable with anything that they're signing. So, being able to really, explain things well and really teach someone, exactly what they're signing or exactly what's going on in the law and how their decisions are going to, the law will affect the decisions they make, really goes hand in hand.
Right. Awesome. So it's really being able to communicate.
It really is, to be honest. Yes, I think. I mean, I think a lot of professions are like that, but in particular, I think the law is really confusing to understand. So being able to explain it is, important.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree. And having the distinct pleasure of reading a number of different business contracts recently, some of it was really confusing just because of the languaging. So
yeah, I agree.
So let's kind of get into what makes up estate planning. What are like some of the pieces that people should be thinking about?
So, I believe that, everybody should have at least certain foundation documents, make a good foundation.
Right.
And these documents really everybody needs. And to be honest, once you have those foundation documents, it really covers 90% of the people. But it's important to start there. And the first document, of course, is a will. And a will, sets out a couple things that are really important. One, where you want your property to go, where you want your assets to go, who, or, charity, a person, how you want it to be, divided amongst people. And truth is, if you don't have a will and it states where you'd like your assets or how you want them to be divided, it's not that the state will take more money, but there is a prescribed chart as to how the assets will flow. Right. So, it's not going to be necessarily how you planned it in your mind. You want everything to go to person A, but the law says it's going to person B. Without a will, that it goes to person B. Right. So everybody should have a will. If you have minor children, that will itself will also lay out who would take those children if you and your partner weren't here, be the guardian. It also lays out who would control the money if you both weren't here. So which is really important, a parent to the child and sort of a parent to the money. Right. And without that in the will, you really leave it up to the court to decide the final decision about, how that's going to work. Right. And needless to say, they will be involved in the process and for years to come. Executor. And the executor is the person who takes care of your life and your business and wraps things up. They plan the funeral, sell real estate, pay bills. And so it's important that you pick the person that you want to be the person to kind of control what happens. Not really what happens, but to control how things are proceeding in your estate. I mean, your will control what happens. You state in my will, this is how I want things to go, but you have to elect somebody to, carry those wishes out.
Right, and to manage it.
To manage everything, correct. Not really make the decisions, but to manage it. So it's nice to elect that person yourself. Yeah. So everybody needs a will. If you have a home, bank accounts, a brokerage account, minor children, any of those things are covered by a will. Okay. The other document that you need is powers of attorney. Powers of attorney are for health and finance. Okay. You have a will only protects you when you pass. Powers of attorney are for when you're alive. Mm-hmm. So if you have trouble conducting your own finances or your health care, You
Right.
elect somebody else to do it for you. And it's really important because if, you're ever in a situation where you're unhealthy, or you're in a situation where you are traveling overseas and you need somebody to pay your bills, you could be perfectly healthy, you could be, in the military service, you could be away for work. If you need somebody to pay your bills, file your taxes, talk to the card company, call Pico, utility companies,
Right.
whatever needs to be done. If you don't have that power of attorney, it will sit, sort of idle, if you will, until you come back, or until somebody, sort of goes to court to become the power of attorney, which is a much more complicated process. It's much easier to have a power of attorney ready to go if need be.
Right.
And, when it comes to your health care, you should be able to elect the person that you want to speak on your behalf, should you not be able to speak for yourself if you are ill. And
Yes.
so that's what the powers of attorney do.
Right.
The other document is a living will. And a living will expresses your wishes should you be in a permanent unconscious state.
Mhm.
So if you are unable to communicate, and you are being kept alive by a machine, what are your wishes? Would you like extraordinary measures? Do you not want extraordinary measures?
Right.
Those wishes should be laid out, because obviously if you are in that situation, you will not be able to express your wishes at that time.
Right.
um, so those are definitely the foundation documents that
Okay.
everybody needs. And many times it does cover most people. One has a different situation. Some people have need other documents, other kinds of trust and things like that. But everybody should at least start with those documents.
Right. Right. I agree. And I think like those documents are so important. And as you said, cover so much. I am curious though, at what point should somebody consider having a trust?
Well, it really depends on where you live and the tax laws in your state, in a sense. I mean, in
Okay.
Pennsylvania, most people do not have trust, because if you have a regular revocable trust, it doesn't save on taxes, it doesn't protect from creditors or anything like that. So most people in Pennsylvania don't have them. If you are in a situation where you, have accumulated extreme wealth, then sometimes you have an irrevocable trust, which is a different type of trust, and
Right.
kind of pulls the assets out of your estate. But really, the reason they're only meant for people with extreme wealth is because once you put that money in that trust, you can't have it back. And so if
Right.
you need money to eat and live and things like that, like we
Yeah.
do,
Yeah.
things like that, you can't put that money into a trust
Got it.
and kind of leave it behind. So it really depends. Some people do have trusts if they have multiple real estate in different states.
Okay.
Then they do sometimes have a revocable trust, and that's sort of to make the probate process a little easier. When you have real estate in multiple states, then you would have to, when you pass, the executor would have to probate kind of in every single state.
Right.
So some people have trust for those purposes, but it really depends on the state you live in. In some states, everyone has a trust because of different tax laws and different reasons. In Pennsylvania, where I practice, most people do not.
Okay. Okay. So really the benefit is if you're in Pennsylvania to have a trust is if you have multiple real estate holdings or
In
something.
different states.
Okay. Are there any
Right.
other benefits to having the trust?
In Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
the only other benefit would really be is that it's, your will is public record. If you pass, anybody can go and look it up and see it. You go to the county courthouse. Trusts are not. So it does, keep it out of, if you if you need
Right.
privacy or something like that. If you put it in a trust, then if every single asset that you have is in a trust, you cannot go to probate. But usually what happens is, people create a trust and put assets in there, but they forget to put some in. So
Okay.
probate has to happen anyway.
Right.
But if you're very diligent and you've put every single thing in that trust, it would keep you out of probate. I don't think necessarily that's a reason to do a trust. I don't think probate in Pennsylvania is that bad, to have to, change all the titles and your bank accounts and all your stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Mhm.
I'm curious too, because I think, like my family, we have a lot of conversations about this stuff where my parents are planners, I'm a planner, my kids will probably be planners just because we have so many, conversations about what's going on with who.
Mhm.
Um, I think the power of attorney is really helpful too if you have, for instance, older parents or
Mhm.
you're older and your kids, um, are helping you or
Right.
whatever. Like, what's some of the ways people can start to have those conversations, or something that they might want to talk about to discuss?
I mean, I think, I don't think it necessarily, depends on age. I mean, I think everybody should have a power of attorney no matter what age you are. And sometimes I just say to people that it's not really always about, like I said, being unhealthy or, you can't conduct things because you're older.
Right.
It's really more about making sure that the person you trust is the one who has access to
Right.
your finances and your health care should for any reason you not be able to. Even in a situation where you're married for 50 years, if it is only, one spouse's name on the mortgage or one spouse's name on the credit
Right.
card or the utility bill, and that particular spouse is unavailable for whatever reason, and you need to call the utility company or the mortgage company. I think a lot of people have been in that situation where they call and the company says, well, I can't talk to you because
Oh,
you're not
right.
on the bill or whatever. And they say, well, we've been married though for 30 years. And they're like, well, we don't care. So sometimes it's really just a convenience thing. I mean, that, you may need to use the power of attorney just to be able to talk to PICO in a sense. Enforce that power of attorney or, kind of get that going for that reason. So
Right.
it's not always about necessarily being old and infirm or things like that. And I think that estate planning in general, wills, power of attorney, are really just like any other insurance policy, car insurance, health insurance. I mean, it's really an insurance to make sure that if, something does happen to you healthcare wise, that you are covered, that you are
Right.
insured, and that, whatever your wishes are being honored through this insurance, if you will.
Right.
And wills themselves, you hope you make a will and you don't use it for many, many years, but unfortunately, we will all use it. So it is an insurance we use, but I think powers of attorney are sort of a type of car insurance to, catch it all and cover things just in case something, should happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that in your lifetime you'll even use the power of attorney. I mean, if you, are always available, you're never ill, you don't get to that point, so you never use it, you never use the insurance. But just like life insurance, car insurance, it's important to have.
You know what? I love that analogy, um, because I hadn't really thought about it as far as like being able to call and talk to Pico or any
Right.
things. And not recently, but I have been on the receiving end of, you're not on the bill, so we're not going to talk to you.
Right. Of course, of
And
course.
I
And listen, I get it. They have to protect themselves. I mean,
absolutely.
I can say I'm anybody on the phone, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm the wife. So, I do understand it from their point of view. And, even invoking that power of attorney, I mean, you still have to sort of prove who you are, but
Exactly.
at least you have a vehicle to, kind of do that.
Yeah. What are some other, I guess, things that people can avoid um, once they set up a will?
Like avoid.
Like, what are some of the problems that you might see or
Uh-huh.
seen because somebody doesn't have a will?
So a couple things. One is, a big thing that I find is one, there are a lot of blended families, and unfortunately, if you pass without a will, your stepchildren by law are going to get nothing. And so if you feel like that's not what you want, you better, arrange otherwise. So I think I've seen that a couple of times. And I think that, I think it's not what the stepchildren maybe were expecting, but
Right.
that's how that works. So the law again provides how things will be divvied up and given out. So I think that's a problem. The other thing is that if you have minor children and you don't have a will and you do not state who is going to be the trustee of that money, then the court will assign somebody to be the trustee. And it will probably not be anybody and no, you will not necessarily be here, but it will be a stranger who is essentially governing your money until your children are 18.
Yeah.
And even if the court does allow for a trustee to govern that money, so that in your family, they would have to ask the court permission to use that money.
Wow.
So that's not so great either. And so if you assign a trustee, then the court's out of it. They see it's a valid person, they take the oath, and everything's good. So those are like two big problems that I see come up.
Okay.
I also see a lot of problems, not necessarily with the will, but when you do estate planning with an attorney, you also talk about how you want to designate your beneficiaries on retirement accounts and life insurance. And if you many times those designations are incorrect for people for a variety of reasons. They forget to change them. They're just wrong. And so that's sort of part of estate planning. And if those designations, those beneficiaries are incorrect when you pass, that's the way it's going to stay.
Right.
And so, those are some big things I see a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm curious too, like for somebody who, maybe did a will 5, even 10 years ago, how often should somebody update it?
So, wills do not expire. They, can go on for as long as you want them to. But if your life changes, be it, divorce, marriage, you hit the lottery, you should change your will. The other big thing is that you make different choices over time. Maybe 10, 20 years ago, you wanted, person A to be the executor, but now that person either you no longer want that person, maybe that person is older now. You have to change your will. If you designate somebody to a position within your will and you change your mind, you have to change your will. So it's always a good idea to look through things.
Okay.
Sure, that your choices are still what you want them to be, which is a big thing. But if you have a big life-changing event, then it's always a good idea to look and change things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Would you share with everybody, where we can connect with you? Because I'm sure people
Sure.
want to get more info.
Absolutely. So my office is in Narberth, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And I service Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County, and Philadelphia County. My phone number is 610-761-6363. And my email is hturner, TURNER, at heatherturnerlaw.com. And between now and the end of the year, if you make an appointment and you mention this interview, Emi Zoom interview, you will receive 10% off of estate planning services, even if we meet after the first of the year, but you have to make the appointment by the end of the year.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to put your email address. It should be in the link below. And then they'll include the Emi Zoom interview too. So if you have questions, if you haven't done any planning before, if you think you might need to revisit something, definitely reach out to Heather. She is an amazing wealth of knowledge. And get it taken care of, because it's really very simple once you start the process. And I think, I know when I did my estate planning, I felt just such a sense of relief, and I'm sure that's how your clients feel too, even though it can
Mhm.
seem daunting at first.
Yeah, most people say that. Yes.
Yeah. So cool. So thank you, Heather. I just appreciate you spending time and sharing your knowledge, because it's been phenomenal. And, I learned something, and I know everybody else did. So,
Well,
uh,
thank you. Thank
really
you for
cool.
having me.
Yeah. And
All
to
right.
everybody who's watching, thank you for being here. Check back next week, so I'm going to have another interview and another video to share with you. And until then, bye.
Bye bye.